Started from the bottom, kept on climbing, perfect timing, looking down from the top. I don't see no opposition from my position. I'm focused. It's the must, I complete the mission. I won't stop, I can't stop. The grind is all I know. I'm focused, I can't stop. The hustle's all I know. I'm hungry, ambitious. My heart is on go. You in the presence of greatness. That's all you need to know.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another Identity Jedi interview. This one is a little special edition because we are live from Las Vegas. And we actually weren't going to do this, but then we started looking at schedules. I was talking to the team and I was like, listen, there's no way, if we got the man himself, we got to get him. We got to get this on wax because we've been trying to get this thing recorded for probably like over a year. So welcome in, have my special guest, Mr. Stephen Washington, head of identity at Cargill, man. Super dope to have you here, bro. Like, I know we've been planning this for a minute.
For a minute.
For a long minute. Holly has been like cursing at me in her head for like months because we haven't gotten this on the books, but we finally got it. So pleasure to have your time, man, to sit down with you, dude. And let's just open it up, man. I want to let you like just kind of tell little people about yourself, like your journey and identity, because I tell a lot of people, man, you're one of the leaders that people really should know because of what you bring to this industry.
Yeah, no, I kind of like label myself the best, worst kept secret, like an identity. It's like folks who know me, it's just like, oh man, like, yeah, we know Steven. And it's like, well, Steven, like who's Steven? And it's like, oh, that's Steven. So I've been doing this for 25 years. And it's crazy because most identity leaders start out as like, I was a programmer, man.
Yeah.
Like I was a hardcore Java 2 programmer, building websites. I mean, I built a cell point light solution in like 2008, doing workflows and automatic provisioning. But after that, it was like, okay, I got it. What's next? And then engineering, okay. The architecture, then the management. Oh my gosh, management. People,
Man.
oh, that's a whole different ball game right now. You know, I mean, technology is hard, but dealing with people and personalities.
Yeah.
We're gonna talk about that one later. But honestly, once I got into like just like leadership, I want to be innovative. I want to kind of change like the world that we look at. And with identity, it's now literally everywhere.
Right.
You know, we all talk about zero trust or like network and all identity, like what's important. But at the end of the day, I love this space because it allows opportunities for everyone. You know, I've hired people into this space from finance, from sourcing, from risk. I mean, anyone has transferable skills for this space. And that, man, there's no better feeling than to give people opportunities, hands down.
Yeah. It's always been the hardest question I've had to answer when people ask me like, you know, how do you get into identity or like how to get in? And I tell people, it's like, it's kind of, there is no background I could give you, right? Because there's so many things that you have to do within this industry, right? And actually, I want to get your take on this because this will be a very interesting topic. So I was just, I did a video cast with like Mark and the Strata guys about a week ago. And their question was, if you could build like the perfect program to tell somebody to go learn identity, what would it be? So I'm gonna lay out for you what my program is, and I want to hear your thoughts on it and see what you would do differently. So I said, okay. So what I would do is first year, right? I would have you do like computer theory. I would probably take you up to like algorithms, stuff like that. Like none of the differential equations, none of the math stuff. I just want you to understand the theory of computing, how to put together data structures and algorithms, right? That's the first year. Second year, right? I would take you basically through an MBA program, right? A 1-year MBA program. I want you to understand all about business, right? How the business operates, what's important to a business, all those things there. Third year, I'm gonna make you go journalism school because I need to teach you how to communicate, how to write, how to effectively be able to tell a story. And then the fourth year is all just straight like 2-3 month projects. I'm gonna give you an actual project. You gotta build infrastructure, you gotta run it. I would love to like team with like, you know, maybe outside companies to kind of do externships or something like that. And that would be my 4-year program to get somebody ready to come into identity.
So I'm actually laughing on this one because I'm listening to you and I'm like, that's like my journey. So let me tell you why. So the first year, computer theory. I mean, I went to school for computer engineering, you know, and that was about theory, but also first few jobs, programming, everything else, cool. But then I went to, you know, major companies, Merck, Home Depot. But then I went to a startup because I wanted to actually learn about like the business. So the MBA side, I went to a startup so I could learn about how to run a business and everything else. After that, I went to Big Four. I said, well, I know how to run a business. I know how to program the work. But how do I sell this? How do I actually tell the story? Like create a narrative.
Yeah.
So I went to actually, you know, a Big Four firm. And then what I did was, okay, now I got those first 3. Then I went back to the startup, taking the now, year 4 now, is like now I'm going to implement what I learned at the Big Four. And I just did that. And after I did that, the world became my oyster.
Yeah.
Because, so, I mean, I actually tend to agree with you, except for one thing. Year one, theory may not keep somebody interested in this program. That's the only, I think, thing I would kind of highlight is theory itself may not keep people interested to get to years 2 to 4.
That's a good point.
But other than that, though, no, that is literally my journey.
That's my nerd bias coming out, right? So I was like, I feel like you gotta start with the computer theory. But no, you're right. I didn't think about it that way. It would probably, if actually did it, probably start with like either the journalism or the MBA, stuff like that, or whatever, to go from there. But I mean, the reason why, like you and I have talked about this offline, right, is because I think to really be, regardless if you want to be a leader in this space or not, but to really just be a good identity practitioner, you have to understand so much other than just the technology. In fact, like I tell people, that's the last thing to go learn is the technology. Really learn everything else, because that's going to help you. Like you got to sell this program within a business. You got to communicate to the business why this thing matters, right? And so if you don't have those skills, like you're really going to struggle.
No, so I would say this: 15 years ago, if you ask me the question, I'll give you this answer. To be a great IAM practitioner, you gotta know networking, directories, a little bit of finance. You gotta understand what's the audit value. Like, how do you say, okay, well, we got audit risk. How do I sell this back to get money, to get investments to actually come in? That was 15 years ago. Today, I'll say, need all that, plus the cloud space, plus now user experience skills. The biggest thing in identity today is, how do you make it easy for people to actually leverage your tools, your products? Like that UX is untapped. I think the best conference I ever went to was about 6 years ago in Salt Lake City. And no, actually it was in Park City, because I went snowboarding and fell on my behind too many times that I'm never gonna do it again. But I digress. It was a UX conference, and during that conference, it was the most amazing thing to say, hey, if people actually make it easy to use, people are gonna follow. Security is no different.
Right.
If you make it easy to use security, everyone will use it because they don't realize it's secure. And that's the only difference today is cloud and UX. I would add to that list.
I'm gonna agree with you, and I'm gonna come back with a story as well. Like the first time that I really saw like a really, really good UX designer, right? I remember he did this whole presentation, right? He had most of the company there, most product, most engineering. And he starts talking about like the story behind like user experience, right? And that's the first time I heard that word. I heard like user interface. I heard user screens, user experience, right? And a lot of it was like, how do you feel when you see this picture? How do you feel when you see this, right? And he showed up. He pulled up like this old like 1995 interface or whatever. He goes, what's the first thing that comes to mind when somebody sees this? And somebody said frustration, somebody said this. Anyway, his whole thing was like all these things, right, comes into how you design an experience for a user to go through. And to that point, like if you design a good experience for them, you can lead the user wherever you want them to do. Yes. So, and security, right, we've been away from that for so long. That's the last thing we think about. It's like, oh, we just want something to be secure. And so therefore we've made secure mean like no or hard or like impossible or complicated, instead of kind of leaning into that user experience to go, well, if we just make it easier for the user, puts more onus on us as programmers and product builders, but the stuff that we're trying to fight against, users using it the wrong way or we would reduce that because users would just follow the areas we give them.
I definitely agree with that, and I'll just add something to it. It's funny is everyone, and the word manipulation is kind of like a negative word.
Right.
But honestly, that's what social media is. That's what these games are. Like, I mean, literally, microtransactions is the biggest form of manipulation in the world. That is literally what keeps people coming back, though.
Right.
So even in security, I'm probably the one person who I hate saying no to a business partner, anything else. I want to say yes to everything. But at the end of the day, we can't because I don't have enough team, like people or budget to say yes. So I can't say yes to everyone. But I say yes to what they need to do. Hey, we actually want to extend our offerings to like external customers. Yes, we can do that, but it'll take either 18 months or you can invest and make it more. So you got to figure out that balance there, But in terms of like UX, I think about old school Pac-Man games, right? And then I think about what got me into Japanese RPGs like Final Fantasy. It was the UX. Like it was the entire, it was beautiful. I mean, like it is. And then going to like the early 2000s, like World of Warcraft. I mean, now my nerves coming out a little bit. I would stay up to 2 o'clock in the morning playing these games, doing raids and guilds. It's crazy. However, I realized it kept you coming back, but not the interface alone, the people. So the human capital, like the human aspect to it, is so important. And folks tend to think, well, we're technologists.
Right.
I think you get the same thing. I go to conferences, no one ever thinks I'm in cybersecurity. It's like, you smile too much. You speak too much. Like, you like too gregarious. Like, what's going on? Are you a technologist? Yes, like we are not like homogenous. It's like, it's not,
Right.
it's not one type of technologist at all. But no, man, no, I think that going forward though, our job is to really make people more aware of what's going on in this space. We have to make them aware. Like, we have to say, hey, here's the opportunities, but not only that, anyone can do this job. I was on the plane, there was someone who was in the DOD, 25 years, and she's like, hey, how do I get into cybersecurity? It's so easy. And now, like, we're not even gonna talk about AI in this call right here,
Right.
but you can literally leverage AI to learn whatever you want.
Yeah.
And if you do that, you can easily get into any aspect of cyber. But identity isn't even hard because you do the work yourself. Like, day in, day out, you are using I am principles every day.
Every day. What would you, so I was talking about this earlier this morning at breakfast, right? I'm still shocked that there's some things that we still struggle with from an implementation standpoint, right? I would have thought as an industry we would have gotten better at this, but we haven't. Stuff like app onboarding, right? We're still struggling with it, but I'm seeing a lot of customers who maybe have 10, 20% of their applications onboarded. It's still this kind of big, kind of challenge, but also just, again, typical stuff that we talked about, process, alignment, all these things. Say there's a young leader, right? They are getting ready to get handed their IAM program, right? And they've never done identity before. So they come to you and go, Steven, like, what am I getting into? What should I know? What would you tell them to get them ready for what they're getting ready to get into?
You can't learn identity by a book. Is right, number one. You have to learn on the job, through the fire. No matter how well versed you are in this space, something is going to be basically, something's going to go awry every single day. So the way that we make it work is by being flexible, always. And what I mean by that, to be really like clear, is you have your strategy, you have your roadmap, you have your ideas, your goals, you have your vision, but you also allow the process to dictate what you do next. And example, app onboarding. Somebody tells me all the time, hey, we got 1,000 apps. We only onboarded 150. Man, we got to get the other 850 in. We have to. Do you? Like, if you think about it, what's the reason to get them onboarded? Are they being used? Are they being, like, how frequent is the usage? I think most organizations have 20, 30% easily application used by one person. Do you really need to onboard that into a large system?
Right.
The answer is really no. What you need to do is say, do I know who used it? And do I have visibility into like that data? That's all. But app onboarding alone is something that may not be unpopular, but services companies love because they get to come in and say, we're going to charge you millions of dollars to do it. Now, I love you guys, services companies. I'm going to look at every camera. I love you guys. However, the reality is, what's the actual rationale behind it?
Right.
And even for me, like as a leader myself, I have to always kind of hedge myself against how much do I need to onboard to be good? I don't have to be 100% anymore.
Right.
Perfection does not exist in cyber at all, but in identity, perfection does not exist. That's hard for me to even say out loud, because I'm like, I like to win in everything, but perfection does not exist. But 80%, 50% is great if you start at zero.
Right.
And I think that's the thing for a new leader is, if you have, let's say, 1 on like the CMMI, it's like, listen, anything you do is going to increase that. It doesn't require a lot.
Right.
It just requires buy-in.
Yeah. And see, I think we'll stay on the app onboarding example, right? I like to pick on this one. I think organizations cling to that number of apps because we don't have any good measurable statistics for identity, right? So they're looking for something to say, well, we'll do this. And we've onboarded 100% of the applications, right? And it's one of the things I've been really hitting at with a lot of my customers and I've been writing a lot about is like, we've got to get to defining actual KPIs, like measurable things. And we don't have a standard in the identity industry. So what I tell companies is like, let's focus on your business, right? What's important to your business? And so I love that, like, okay, if you look at 1,000 apps, it's like, Maybe 1,000 apps doesn't matter to us. Maybe 300 does. If we say, hey, well, these 300 apps, we use 95% of the time. 95% of our access comes through these 300 apps. Let's onboard those 300. Now, would it be nice to have to get to 1,000? Sure, right?
Absolutely.
But like, let's focus the priority, right? So we can start creating milestones to break it down.
Yeah, no, I'll say this. Leading IAM in multiple industries, it's really easy to do it in a highly regulated space.
Yeah.
Highly regulated space is easy to do because you have all these regulations that say, hey, we have to do this to be compliant.
Right.
So compliance tends to drive what you want to do when no one wants to actually, do it themselves.
Right.
However, being at a private company now, I use this phrase all the time. There's no carrot and there's no stick. I can't entice you, I can't force you. So you must be left unto my sparkling personality to say, we just like Steven, let's do it for him. That's not going to fly at all. Because so the thing about it is you got to show true value. KPIs, KRIs are so important. But the thing about it though is that they was normally created for audit purposes or for risk purposes as opposed to actually showing you the efficacy of your program.
Right.
We have to be able to leverage KPIs and say, next month, if this number goes up, I may need to either add on more people, subtract more people, like depending on what it is. You got to use those as true indicators of what to do to continuously improve your program. Sometimes that's upskilling, sometimes that's onboarding, sometimes it's offboarding. It can be a lull where do you want to let go of maybe third parties, different things like that, but you have to be aggressive about that. But right now, you're right, there's no standard. I mean, everyone has guardrails, guidelines. We got NIST. CSF 2.0 is amazing. It really is.
Right.
There's more controls for IAM than any other domain in cybersecurity. I don't know if that's a good or bad thing. Because we have so many controls that people can come in and say, hey, let's do a control matrix, let's do a mapping of this. A mapping to what? Oh, well, the control, like the risk. Who defines the risk? Once you get to that layer, it becomes so much easier to say what's important.
Right.
Because every company defines risk will have a different tolerance. Some companies will accept risk like it's nothing. I don't want to be there. But that's the reality sometimes.
Yeah. I had and I won't say names to protect all the innocent and guilty alike, but man, when I tell you I had a client that, like, their leader just didn't care. Like, there was not, like, did not care about their practices, about the exposures that they had. Like, I remember I spent 30 minutes laying everything out, just didn't care. And I'm like, and the guy was like, well, what can we do? I was like, dude, there's no magic words that I can come up with. There's no report that I'm going to write. Like, he is telling you that this is the level of risk he is willing to accept and he is okay with. There's nothing you can do about that, right? I was like, except update your resume and we find somewhere else to go. Like, I don't.
No. There's one thing on that though. It's when you go into any new program, whether you're an engineer, whether you are a VP, it doesn't matter. You have to understand the appetite, the risk appetite there. For private companies, let's say who are decentralized, each line of business may have a different risk appetite. So if you were to create a centralized service, how you go to bifurcate that between each one?
Right.
That's where, it's not a tech, let's say, episode, but you got like policy planes and everything else that you can come in and say, for this segment of the population, we go to do this.
Right.
But taking the work, like doing that hard, that grind work to say, what's important to you? And then being able to then create, whether it's an algorithm, create something else to say, hey, here's the process that we're doing. But never go into any organization thinking that you know it all. Especially if you're new or like a young leader, you can be amazing as an engineer. You can be amazing as a PM, as a PO. Once you get that leadership title, man, it's a whole new ball game.
Yeah.
Because what you did to get you there is not going to get you further
Right.
at all. Like we have to make sure that we mentor and teach people, hey, you got here because of your individual contributor values. To go now deeper, you gotta now be there because of like your management or your people leadership.
Right.
And that's a huge thing for anybody, for any person in the industry.
And that, you know what, and that's something I would tell people. You get that across the board, whether or not it's an identity, it's in entrepreneurship, it's in life in general, right? When you start to switch from just focusing on your individual accomplishments, right? That gets you to a certain level. That next level is, how do I create or help groom other people to get to those individual accomplishments, right? And that's what you're compensated on, that's what you're rewarded on, that's what moves the needle, like whatever you look at. Like I said, if you're an entrepreneur, it's when you're first starting your company, your first, whatever it is, 2, 3, 5, 7, 10 years, it's your efforts and what you can do. And then once it starts rolling, now it becomes, now I've got to create a process. And now it's, am I enabling the right people? Am I getting the right team to get this thing rolling? Am I giving them what they need to be to go become successful? Because you now want to become a manager of 5 like rock stars who then manage 10, who then manage 20, who then manage 30, right? You can no longer be all the way down in the weeds, and it's not your individual contribution that matters, it's your ability to impact the ones around you that matters. And I think that nuance is lost, I think, sometimes when people move into leadership, right? And they tend to come back and focus on, well, what can I do? What can I do? It's not about what you can do. It's like, well, I mean, it is, but it's like, what can I do to make this person better, right?
Yeah, no, I would say this is, when you're younger and coming up in the game, you know, I had this whole motto, you know, where I had to be the smartest one in the room. I'm pretty sure that you're similar to that. And the thing about it is that that's great, like that got us there, like that moves us up. But then once you get people under you, being the smartest one in the room does what? Like if you tell people that, what is it really doing besides making you seem like you're a narcissist?
Right.
You know? Now, we need narcissistic tendencies to get there, but then once you're there, it's like, what are you going to do? It's like, I got to now lead and mentor you. So I got to put my stuff to the side. But I tell people, no matter how much I've done that, I mean, I've had teams now of 50, 60, 90 people under me. But at the end of the day, I tend to now only use that crazy, go get a, you know, ridiculous grind to make my team better. So I tell people, I was like, I don't lose it. I just only use it now, leverage it when I got to go fight for more money, fight for more people, or fight for, like, to compensate people better.
Right.
You still have to be able to use those tactics that got you there, but you gotta be way more strategic about it, just in general.
Yeah,
you know?
It's awesome. Well, look, man, I'm gonna be respectful of your time, man. I know it's gonna be busy this week, and then you know, we got some things to do. We got some dinners to do later this week.
So one day we gotta go against our calendars, because I think I have 3-4 dinners booked at the same time with 4 different vendors, and 2 of them at the same restaurant. Let me say that again. 4 vendors, 2 at the same restaurant at the same exact time.
Hey,
and
listen.
I'm like, no, sometimes I could be like, I could just go in 1 hour at one table, 1 hour at another table. I may actually just wind up doing that.
I feel like Bill Bellamy made a movie about that, although it wasn't about vendors.
It was
anyway.
about, you know, listen, you know, in different area codes. But at the end of the day, I say this, is I say, I want to end on this one though. I'm here in Vegas, and I'm the only person on a knee scooter. And I got to bring this up. So I'm sitting here with a big boot on my hand, on my ankle. I tore my Achilles tendon a month ago, and I still came out here. And I'm just walking around, and I'm scooting around. I scooted from the Mandalay Bay to the MGM. It took about 30 minutes. And I just see people looking at it like, what is this guy doing? I was like, can I do an Uber? Of course. But I was like, what is this guy doing? But I want to highlight that, saying, sometimes we got to do hard stuff, you know? I would say other words, but we'll keep it Disney. We got to do hard things at times, because when you do hard things, then almost nothing can surprise you. And just forget, as leaders, as engineers, in this game, like, you cannot be surprised. You cannot be caught off guard.
Right.
You have to know what you're doing, man.
At all times. All right, y'all, that's it.
All right.
We'll head it back. We'll see you guys next time.
I won't stop, I can't stop, the grind is all I know. I'm focused, I can't stop, the hustle's all I know. I'm hungry, ambitious, my heart is on go. You in the presence of greatness, that's all you need to know.